The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, has been grappling with severe insecurity for decades, particularly in its eastern regions. The presence of over 100 armed groups has led to widespread chaos and instability. Recently, the M23 rebel group, considered one of the most formidable, captured Goma, a strategic city in the east. This development has intensified tensions, with the DRC government accusing neighboring Rwanda of supporting the rebels. Despite these escalating issues, the African Union, AU, has been criticized for its lack of effective intervention. In a recent interview, President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso expressed his disappointment with the AU's handling of the DRC crisis. He stated, "Children of Congo have been dying for years. Several other conflicts, including the one in Sudan, have existed on the continent. We would have liked to see the African Union generate the strength and strategies necessary to support its states so that they could find peace. We will not even talk about us in the Sahel region. For nearly 10 years, the Sahel has been the scene of international terrorism. But we see no support from these organizations to find a solution." President Traore's remarks highlight a broader issue: the AU's perceived inability to effectively address prolonged conflicts across Africa. Countries such as Mali, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, the DRC, the Central African Republic, Sudan, and Libya have faced persistent instability, whether due to civil wars or terrorist activities. The lack of decisive action from the AU raises questions about its role and effectiveness in maintaining peace and security on the continent. The situation in the DRC is particularly dire. The recent capture of Goma by M23 rebels has led to a significant humanitarian crisis. Reports indicate that over 2,000 bodies need to be buried following the offensive, with at least 900 people killed and almost 3,000 injured in recent fighting. Hospitals and morgues are overwhelmed, and there are concerns about the spread of diseases due to limited burial land and disrupted refrigeration. The conflict has also displaced more than 700,000 people, exacerbating the already dire humanitarian situation. In response to international pressure, the M23 rebels declared a unilateral ceasefire, citing humanitarian reasons. They stated that the ceasefire was aimed at preventing further bloodshed and allowing aid to reach displaced individuals. However, despite the ceasefire, the militia has not committed to relinquishing control of Goma. The situation remains tense, with both the M23 and the Congolese army accused of human rights abuses. The DRC government has called for international sanctions against Rwanda, accusing it of supporting the M23 rebels. The US and EU have condemned Rwanda's involvement, with UN reports indicating Rwandan troop and weapon support for the M23 militia. The Congolese government emphasizes that sanctions are necessary to compel Rwanda to participate in negotiations meaningfully. Presidents Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC and Paul Kagame of Rwanda are set to attend a regional summit to address the crisis. The ongoing conflicts in the DRC and other African nations underscore the need for a more proactive and effective approach from the African Union. The AU's mandate includes promoting peace, security, and stability on the continent. However, its perceived inaction in the face of prolonged crises raises concerns about its capacity to fulfill this role. As President Traore's comments suggest, there is a pressing need for the AU to develop and implement strategies that can effectively address and resolve these conflicts, bringing much-needed peace and stability to the affected regions. Insecurity brought on by terrorists persists even in nations like Nigeria, Ghana, and Togo that are perceived as stable and secure, even though this has been going on for decades. None of these nations have received any real assistance from the various blocs on the continent, including the African Union. Talking and talking is the best the African Union has done. It's pitiful. All of these nations have been left to cope with the problem on their own, and they are forced to rely on outside assistance from the West. However, that hasn't resolved the issue either. Numerous Western military forces, including those from the US, France, Germany, and Russia, to mention a few, have been drawn in by the insecurity. However, the insecurity has only gotten worse over time, even with the presence of thus many forces with top-notch military equipment and intelligence. However, how is that even possible? Foreign military forces have failed to remove armed rebels and terrorists from the continent, despite the fact that they typically use inferior ammunition. Civilians are left in the crossfire in each of these cases. To be honest, the situation is pitiful and enraged. These foreign military clearly have no interest in assisting in the fight against instability. This implies that the situation is left to be handled by Africans. The Apex African Organization hasn't demonstrated any ability to resolve the issue, though. Traore has publicly expressed his dissatisfaction with the African Union, maybe for this reason. Traore continued by highlighting the African Union's shortcomings in addressing problems, particularly those involving injustices committed by the West against African nations.